In a world filled with screens and distractions, we invite you to reconnect with the natural world around you. Welcome to Nature Bound, a podcast dedicated to unpacking the intrinsic bond between humans and nature. We'll uncover the benefits of spending time outdoors, including how a nature-centric lifestyle can improve your mental health, elevate your leadership skills, and unleash your creativity. And now here's your host, outdoor enthusiast, and renowned author of The 7 Principles of the Magic Rock, Emanuel Rose.
Well, hello. Today we have got a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And I started camping when I was a child, so young that my mother tied me to a tree in order that I wouldn't go and fall into the creek. So it was before I was even 1 year old. So we're going to talk today about camping and about how to program camping for your kids, your grandkids, your neighbor kids, and talk about summer camp and the power of summer camp in a person's life as they're growing up. So I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that had a nature ethic and an outdoor ethic, and I learned early on how to fly fish. And my family, being Central Valley folks, spent a lot of time in the greater Yosemite area. And it was on one of the trips, I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was fly fishing by myself, and I hooked this fish, and all of a sudden I looked up and I've got people up on a trail above me cheering for me, and I land this trout, and I'm getting applause from the German tourists who are also in Yosemite. We lived at a different time though, when the kids would run free for the most part. We were pretty feral, and the parents were happy to have us out of camp, out of the house, and we could go and discover things on our own as long as there were no bones broken. Today, I'm going to talk with the executive director of Camp Jack Hazard, Jason Poisson, and we're going to talk about camping, glamping, and summer camping.
Hi there, Rose. How's it going?
Hey, Jason. It's great to see you. I've known Jason for the better part of 30 years now, and we were on staff together at Camp Jack Hazard. And I'd say when I first met Jason, when I first met you, I was hoping that you would get fired like a compadre. And I have to admit that my initial assessment of your capabilities was incorrect, because over the years you've shown great proficiency at not just managing children, but also managing a camp and a foundation and all the things that go into running a successful business. So it's really an honor and pleasure to have a conversation with you today.
And I'm not totally sure I didn't get fired. I think I just stayed. They're like, go. And I was like, well, I'll just go to work. And
yeah, right. I'll just go to the other side of camp.
It's funny, your story about when you started this reminds me of when I was a kid, because, well, my parents were probably less directly like taking me to do specific things. We did always live like nature adjacent. So Placer County, Shingle Springs, I grew up in, the Santa Cruz Mountains in the Redwoods. And I remember in Shingle Springs, one day my brother and I were like, hey, look, a backyard. And we just went tooling off, and exploring. And then we saw this amazing rock. And we were like, there's an amazing rock. We should climb to the top of this. Not terribly a big deal, but we got up there and I was like, okay, well, now we're at the top of the rock. And so we went to leave and my brother refused to get off the rock. Like, scared himself into thinking he couldn't get down. And I was,
oh yeah, right.
Like at a very early age, like 7 or 8, once again, we were being free and feral. I was starting my early career of counseling somebody that's emotional in the woods through this process. And apparently, I believe it took long enough that my parents actually, I don't know, woke up from their nap or whatever they were doing, and we're like, "Where are the kids?" And we're like doing the yelling to people, like, and we're like, "Hey, we're right here," and they're like, but with in all seriousness of those kind of things, those are the things that I found formative when I was young. Being out with family, being out with friends, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, sometimes up to no good. But those are the memories I have when I was from growing up. I don't have a lot of memories of my favorite English teacher in ninth grade, and the good old classroom time or,
right.
kind of activities. But I do remember all of my experiences in nature. And then through a much longer mechanism of events than I want to discuss here, I landed myself in the YMCA, and eventually landed me at Camp Jack Hazard. And I'd been to other Y camps, and they were cool. I ended every summer going, best camp ever. Woo! But there was something strange about some of those camps for me, like the cabins had windows.
Right.
And heater, and everything was, very centralized. And I came to Camp Jack Hazard, and I think this was probably just a year or two before you and I met, and came into the driveway of it, and I literally had the sensation of coming home.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember even at the end of that summer, I was a 10th grader. Somewhere in August, my mom popped up on site, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Dude, you got to go home." And I was like, no, I'm working in nature here, having fun. And she's like, "No, school starts Monday. Get in the car." And so,
oh, geez. Yeah.
and I know that you and I share that passion and that being lost in nature, that the rest of the world just kind of falls off your shoulders, and you don't think about maybe some of those nuts and bolts things. And that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's a way that we can touch a different part of our humanity, the non-cultural part of our humanity.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you today. Was I've got a camping trip planned with the family in May, and I've got grandkids that I want to have a little bit of structure for. So I wanted to see what like 4, 5, 6-year-old kids, and what we should do in order to keep them occupied, and how to have some safe adventures, because the moms are really close in the camp, so you don't want any broken bones or blood, right?
Right.
So yeah, what do you got? Some kind of a short list of activities I should put together.
Yeah, absolutely. So some super easy ones. And here's the one thing I'd start off with, and even much to the chagrin of the moms, we see this at camp. When kids first get to site, they're like, "Hey, there's a rock," and I'm like, "Yes, yeah, they're like, "Can we climb on it?" I'm like, "Of course, that's what it's there for." So I wouldn't, just because there's the potential of risk, and there's the potential of moms giving dirty looks. Get them on them, get on the rocks, feel them, touch them, get scrapes, get bruises. You'll survive. The body has this amazing thing that, like, you hurt yourself and it fixes itself. Like, that's great.
Right.
But some of the most simple things, and one of the things I always deal with, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is, I'm really excited that you're doing this, is a lot of grandparents or parents just get so overwhelmed with the concept of even going into something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people who think about hiking the PCT, which is about 1,000 miles or 3,000 miles long. They're like, "Oh, it's impossible." That's because you're thinking about 3,000 miles at the time, right? The important part is to think. When I've done some long hiking on the PCT, and the answer really is, when people ask me, "How'd you do it?" I said, I always try to make it nice and easy for them. I say, I put my backpack on.
Right. Yeah.
And then I took the first step.
All right.
And then I did that for a long time. And about 50 miles in, I was like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can go back. or I could just finish it. So the
Right.
first part of it is take that first step. And I think that's the best part. Once you're out there, first off, ixnay the old screen time play. Lock them in the glove box. Don't bring them with you. And that's okay. They'll survive. I know it seems like they won't, and they might not for like 15 minutes, but after a while they get tired and then they stop complaining about it. So I don't know much about Maine, but I've heard there's lots of mountain terrain there. And I'm sure, as we've talked about in like some of your publications, obviously planning ahead so you know what that is out there. Rivers, creeks, lakes, oceans, whatever it might be, mountains. And one of my tricks that I always do when I was dealing with that is talk it up on the way out.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Right.
Really like be like, oh man, I hear the shoomy rivers out here. It's going to be. Have you ever thrown a rock in a river? Do these kind of little things, and then when you get to the site, you're like, hey, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I want to throw a rock in the river. And you're like, that's a great idea.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm thinking. So you kind of plant seeds is a big one for me. And then when you get out there, there's the nature's TV, I like to call it. One channel. It's called The Campfire.
Nice.
And it's a great show. Man, every show is different than the last show. And also one of the things that I see parents doing is being really risk adverse with fires. Let them chuck twigs and sticks in there. That's the fun of it. Have fun. Like, it's okay. Once again, burns heal. But engage your kids in cooking on the fire with you. Get them to be a part of making dinner. That's how, even if it's just the silly little things. Crazy thought, let them cut stuff with, say, the old camping knife.
Nice. Yeah.
I know these things trust me, I'm a parent in today's age.
Right.
I have two boys who managed to survive this experiment that I'm doing at 19. And they did all this stuff with us. My wife and I, are big outdoors persons, as you know. And so they, we early on got them out there doing stuff. Water is a amazing thing for you to do with kids. It probably rivals the Campfire TV game, because you can just sit next to it and just let it flow by you, flow through you, and to watch your kids interact with it. I'm not saying throw your kid into the white water rafts, deep end of things, but find a place that's safe and secure, and that that if they fall down, they're not going to wash away. Check the conditions, but teach them how to skip rocks. Teach them how to throw rocks into how big of a splash they can make. And not if you're fishing. That's a bad plan if you're fishing.
Yeah, do that after you're done fishing.
And so I mean, those are the like super easy things. And I know another thing that I think is a major barrier for families is the concept, and I get this, especially nowadays, the cost of doing this. Right. And they assume, like, I've got to buy my tent, I've got to buy a 0-degree bag, I've got to get the thing that like is a pulley that puts my food up in the air so bears don't get it, and the fanciest stove, which I do agree with getting the fanciest stove, but not in this case. You don't have to really do a lot of investment. And so I used to put all my camping gear together, my camping cook gear together by going to a thrift store.
For sure. Yep.
Just buying pots and pans for $1 or $2 each, and then using them on the fire and the grill, etc. Cutting boards, etc. Like, you don't have to go crazy with everything out there that has certain labels like Mammoth or North Face or those other
Chef.
Patagucci.
No, but I like what you were saying about getting the kids involved in a meal prep.
Yeah.
And obviously it's got to be age appropriate, but they've got to that way they're actually doing something.
Yeah.
Screen time, 100% behind you on that. That there's no screens on these trips. That's part of the deal.
Right.
And then they've got to learn how to entertain themselves.
Yeah.
Or make up games like we always did. Like throw the ants into the creek and see the trout eat the ants.
Right.
Skipping rocks. Right.
Yeah. And that's the really great part. And I know that something else I think parents really fear sometimes with being in the woods with kids is silence.
Right.
And by that, I mean, not having the device that has music or, something keeping them. But the fear that silence might lead to like engaging and talking with your kids, even if you're just talking about silliness, and, communicating with them and getting on their level and all that business. But I still have this like little heart pitter patter when I'm at places like Cane Meadows and there's all these parents with their newborn, like newbie kids, and they're like barely walking, and down by the river. And I'm like, oh, I miss those days with my kids, because that's a really special time. And like letting them, taking off their shoes and socks. And I remember my babies being in their diapers in the middle of a creek, playing and futzing around, lifting up rocks.
No shoes, no sandals. Actually touching the ground.
Right. Lifting up rocks and looking at the things growing on them. Making little dams, trying to, exert man's force over nature. I guess it's a natural thing that we do. But, one of the things, that's the really great part about going to the woods with your kids, no matter what environment it is connecting with them. Like that should be your number one goal. And by the way, you're in a cool place. And I think those kids need that connection more than and they need that connection to nature. So you're really checking the boxes on this trip.
For sure. So I like it. I'm building an action plan. I think we're going to do the standard quesadilla dinner. That'll be an important one. Of course, the s'mores and the loopy s'mores with the peanut butter. So we got something to do around the fire. And then we're going to work on some kind of a rock skipping event.
Yeah. And championship.
Well, it's going to be a competition. We know that.
Of course. Or biggest splash contest. Got that one.
That's a good one too. Nice.
One of my favorite games when I used to be a counselor was Tombstone. That's a good one. When they're
what's that one?
That's the one where you like lay down and you're like, okay, the game is we're tombstones and tombstones are quiet. So the first one who makes noise loses.
That sounds like a counselor game right there. A little extra time off.
And here's a good trick for parents. I know they're thinking, I'm going to be in nature. My kid's going to be wily and up all crazy. And here's something that we as counselors, I believe you and I both did this, was remember when you go to nature with kids, you're on mountain time, which means that time is 1 hour backwards. And so you have to definitely go, you have to make sure you go to bed at 9 o'clock. And actually they're in bed by 8. Golden time for you guys.
That's right. You got the adult time with the adult beverages.
The root beers, I call them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I like it. I think that gives me a few action items. I'll get them set up for one short hike because they got short legs.
Yeah.
So, but we'll get out and do some kind of a creek walk. So Camp Jack Hazard has it's a big event this year due to an anniversary. Why don't you tell us about what's going on to celebrate 100 years of Camp Jack Hazard?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, I think you and I are tapping into something that is timeless for people and for our culture and our society. is that we are celebrating 100 years of actually providing some of the very unique and challenging and life-changing experiences and adventures in the high Sierras. And it's funny because, like, I mean, at first I was just like, oh, that's cool. But then I started looking around Modesto and I started thinking about, you know, in lots of places in California, 100 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, think about all of the things that have gone on globally that, you know, Camp Jack Hazard, people were going to Camp Jack Hazard while it was happening, you know, World War II, Korea, I mean, the civil rights movement, the, you know, just all of these things in our world out here. And yet this little funny 26 acre site in the high Sierras continued on existing, just bussing kids up, hanging out for a week, exploring the mountains around us. And ultimately, really what I think, finding yourself and finding your family.
Yeah.
You know,
I think what's interesting about that too is that even 100 years ago, there were people who were not getting outside in the mountains, right? Like it's not a new phenomenon that we have this kind of gap between very culture specific life and people who get out and explore.
Yeah.
So I think it's fascinating that the kind of addiction to cell phones and internet, while it's a different symptom, it's still underlying the same problem, right? The same challenge we have.
Well, right. Well, I mean, you have to understand cities are built to insulate us from the hardships of the world at large. And so, but it is true. Jack Hazard, I've read some compilations of his correspondence with Forest Service, and that was, you know, in 1923, he started going up the mountain and talking with the United States Forest Service about finding a place to take kids during the summer. And part of that, and I think his big one that he was frustrated, or what he thought was the problem, was we're here in Modesto or the Central Valley, and we're 90 miles away from some of the most amazing country. And and still in those days and today, I see people have never been there their entire life.
Right, for sure.
It's like 70 miles. You're in Yosemite.
Yeah.
And they're like, or the most simplistic thing of like seeing snow.
Yeah.
You know, and I just had
away from the TV for an hour.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us what's going on for this summer. You got is camp full? Are there still people who can get their kids to camp?
Yeah. So we're actually at about 54% capacity. So we're doing just fine. This is actually the time of year that parents, I don't know if they do this where you're at, but we just had Spring Week. It's because of the 2 President Day, like there was 2 3-day weekends for schools, and they just kind of combined it into 1 week.
Okay.
And so
kind of like a spring break.
Yeah, but it's not. It's
a pre-spring break.
Yeah, right. But it's that period that parents are like, what am I going to do with my kids? We got a big one coming. And then spring break's our other big one, where parents are like, oh, I've got to like do something with my kids during the summer. We have 4 sessions of Camp Jack Hazard. They're 1 week long. Those programs are for 8 to 15-year-olds. One of the most unique things about Camp Jack Hazard and I've been a part of a lot of different summer camps in my time, but Camp Jack Hazard is one of the few that during our week of camp, whether you're 8 years old or 17 years old, you leave camp for 3 days.
Yeah.
And where we're at is that you go out and you go backpacking with your cabin in the Carson Iceberg and the Immigrant Wilderness Territories. My kids will, my youngest kids go on a backpacking trip. They carry a backpack. They might just carry the toilet paper, and that's what they can carry. And if you're maybe like 5'8", you can see from the trailhead where you're going to camp. But they do it. And then they go and they set up their tarp shelters, and they set up their kitchen area and their food area. And there's, all of that is part of the process. Whereas that
is the magic of Camp Jack Hazard is the wilderness experience that every camper gets. They get to go backpacking and get to be sufficient as a group in the backcountry.
Yeah, and everybody carries something.
Yeah,
you know, everybody is part of that. They like, we've got 3 days. We need everybody to work together, or it's going to be a very hard 3 days. Whereas our, 15-year-olds, 14, 15, and teen programs will go out on much more significant trips. So they will go anywhere from 4 to 7 miles out. With our teen programs, sometimes doing trips that may be in excess of 20 miles.
awesome.
And so those are really, that's a really unique thing for summer camps. A lot of them, you just go on to site, you do arts and crafts, you go to the pool area, you do some kind of nature program around the site. This one, you have this really authentic experience. And my favorite part about the week is actually being the guy who drives the vans to pick them up, because then you start hearing all these great stories. And when I was a counselor, I was in cabin 10, and like, you had the pre-week when everyone was going and everyone was still kind of getting to know each other. And then you come back from this backpacking trip, and that is cabin 10. And for those kids, that is cabin 10 forever. That is going to be your only memory, is that group of guys that you went out with to Sword Lake and got to go swimming in a lake and maybe jump off some cliffs. Only if there's a lifeguard, by the way, ACA accredited. And then they come back to camp, and we end up our week. We have some cool adventure stuff that is pretty amazing. We have a high and low challenge course. We have a rock climbing and rappelling on this really weird stuff, but we had it imported from far, far away, called granite. And you climb on the granite, and it's hard.
Nice. Yeah. Instead of on human-made plastic.
Correct.
Yeah,
I actually hired an adventure director one year who was a professional climber. And then when he got to camp, he's like, whoa, never actually climbed on granite. I was like, what? He's like, I'm a professional gym climber. I was like, all right.
Oh, gym rat only, huh?
So anyways, and then we have the kind of other things that, like, I think every camp has that is always magical to me. And this is something you definitely have to do with your trip. The campfires at night, and taking an opportunity after the campfire to just look up at the stars. Camp Jack Hazard's blessed at 6,000 feet with such an amazing night sky. You can actually see satellites orbiting the Earth. You can see the Milky Way in all its grandeur. They say there's something called constellations. I have never personally, I've done the little round thing, and I've done the phone, like, oh no, there's Sagittarius. I was like, I don't see it. But I hear you could do that if you wanted.
All right, good.
I can always find Orion. That's my go-to. And then that's the end of the astronomy lesson.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see. So that's regular camp. And then what do you got going on for the 100-year celebration? Tell us about that.
So we've got this year we have what's called our alumni weekend. We're excited. This is where all the people that support the Jack and Buena Foundation, which is actually the kind of the parent nonprofit that runs and organizes Camp Jack Hazard. It was originally intended just to raise money through community, alumni, and potential grant opportunities. And we were going to send kids to camp on scholarships that we would provide. And, the first year we nearly broke our arm patting ourselves on the back, because we think we raised like $16,000, and we sent 28 kids to Camp Jack Hazard. And in that process, and then the next year, the Y came to us and said, hey, we're shutting the doors on camp. And my board of directors at the time, myself, said, yeah, that's a terrible idea. So that was, believe it or not, that was 15 years ago. And we've been running and operating Camp Jack Hazard since then. And the only way that we've been able to do that is through the gracious and generous support from our alumni. So we actually isolate an entire weekend every year for alumni to come up, give you guys the opportunity. Emanuel goes, for those of you that don't know, I know him as a different name. Sorry, my bad. Emanuel goes every year. He's like just a pillar at our alumni weekends. And it's a time for people to reconnect with each other because we all grew up together. And we were all kids together and we all had our opinions of like, oh man, that guy shouldn't be around children like you did. But now we're all grown up and it's great to like see the young families coming from all these great people, and great people beget great people. So we get to meet their, people we grew up, spouses, and those people are all great people as well. But I've had a lot of critiques over the years that, it starts on a Friday night. We have a full Saturday that we do. And then people kind of bail out on Sunday. And they're like, man, I wish I had the opportunity to hike, some of the old spots or go up to Cane Meadows and go horseback riding. And I think they have great sarsaparillas, I remember.
They have great sarsaparilla.
And so this year we're actually, because to celebrate our alumni weekend and also to celebrate our camaraderie and also to give people those great opportunities for us to remember all these great things, we're actually starting it the Wednesday beforehand. So we're going from July 31st to August 4th. The site is going to be up and running. Most importantly, I've noticed for a lot of my mom folk, the pool will be up and running and clean.
Okay, good.
It will be cold.
And do we still have a wood-fired boiler for that thing, or
No. They invented something called the water heater in the last 100 years. It's great.
All right,
good. Also, I think California labor law has kiboshed the hey, volunteers, go and stoke that fire for 4 hours.
That's too bad. That used to be one of my favorite things.
California ruins everything. Anyways, I'm really excited about it. One of the other things that I'm super excited about is so far with our outreach is that we're going to have lots of different generations of Camp Jack Hazard. I've talked to guys who were there in the 60s, which for you and I, that doesn't sound that old, right? Because we were kind of close to that growing up. And or the 70s, etc. Dude, now it's been like 50 or 60 years. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Classic rock now plays stuff from 2001. So anyhow, I'm excited to see some of the old timers coming up. I love hearing their stories about the different kind of program we used to run up there. Back when the YMCA used to do just strictly boys camps and then strictly girls camps. We are co-ed camp. So, but I think, wow, that would be fun. Like, I know it's really like ancient and people probably wouldn't do it now, but I would love to do an all boys camp. Oh man.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. Or like an all girls camp. And, I think that would be a really cool way to connect with them also without kind of all the weird society, other pressures that, being a co-ed camp brings. And just having a group of guys yelling and yarring.
Well, that's what the weekends offer for, I guess now.
Right. So anyways, we're offering this extra time period for all of us to come together, hang out. We're going to be doing some special hikes. We're going to be offering some arts and crafts stuff. So we're going to have a full-on intense tie-dye day, which used to be a really big activity when we were kids. And then we're going to end every day like we always do, sitting around a campfire, singing songs. Our alumni have some pretty amazing musicians who campfire is supposed to go typically from like 7:45 to 9:15. I don't think at alumni we've ever been in bed before 12.
No way. Yeah.
And-
No, way too much catching up and too many skits to do.
and too many songs to sing. And some of
Yeah.
our musicians, I'm not going to mention Joel's name. You can be like, play Smoke. Give me one. Come on. Sugar Mountain.
Smoke on the water. Yeah.
Sugar Mountain. He's like, I don't know. I haven't played. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just right back into it. Like he's, I think he was 30 when I knew him back then too. So he's.
Well, we used to. I mean, there's the human jukeboxes, right? We got a few of those. So,
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And so singing those songs again and singing them like, and feeling like you're, 16, 17 years old again, is a pretty amazing feeling, and a pretty amazing feeling of connected with the others around you. And of course, that always leads to going back up to, we're going to bed. We're going to bed now. And then we play music again till 2 a.m. And
go to the dining hall and,
Right.
And sing in there for a while.
Right. Somebody smuggled in some sarsaparillas. And we hang out and play more music and we laugh and it's great. But yeah, I really wanted to give people kind of more of a chance to hang out and remember where the kind of place that we grew up, because all of those people do things with their kids in nature, and they do it because they learned it in the programs that we shared.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I really am. My big thing right now is trying to help people, and I love what you're working on, is not just for doing it with your kids and with your family, but for yourselves. Because I talk to people, I'm like, oh, you could, they're like, I'd love to hike a peak. And I was like, all right, let's go Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
And they're like, no, I have to buy the shoes. I got to, then I got to find a map. I've never been. I was like, no. Yes, get some good boots on. Let's go.
Yeah, let's
Like,
go. Let's do something. Do something, even if it's wrong.
Right. And that's definitely what I've learned at camp is, say you're going to go to a peak, make it halfway, and that's what you make that success a meaningful experience for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's better to go and do it half a trip rather than no trip.
Right. And there's so many ways to get out into the world. I mean, really, me, I'm an avid winter guy. So, I love going skiing. I love going in the snowmobiles. I love doing anything that's actually just snow related. Just got back from a wonderful trip in Colorado and Utah. Hooked up with our friend Brett Denon on that trip. That guy's good.
Ski lift tour.
Yeah. It's great. And I really just, man, he's going to Montana next. I'm like, I got to block this guy. But the whole thing is just getting outside. And I think about the kind of the keys that I think about, like, that remind me that I'm not at home and I'm not in my office or my kitchen. Is when that first time you get out of the car and you take that first deep breath.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And you just get oriented. You're like, okay, where am I? Here I am.
And it's cool because you're kind of like, and especially nowadays in California, you're typically surrounded by lots of people. But you're all out there to do the same thing. You're all out there and you take that deep breath. You and I know the journey up the mountain we're at here about when you hit sugar pine and you open up the window and it's the first time you start to smell the sugar pines. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
And then
relax a little bit.
Right. And then there's just these moments and opportunities, even if you don't go far into the wilderness, where you just kind of look around and you're like, the parking lot might have been full, but you're like, look at this. This is
you got a little
amazing
space.
So, that's something I'm passionate about, obviously. And it's one of the reasons that, I think, I made a career change to make the foundation happen and keep Camp Jack Hazard up and running, because it's just so important. And it's so important for our families, and it's so important for our kids.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you're doing and your dedication to not just the foundation and camp, but also to all the kids and the lives that you're affecting in a positive way. So,
right.
Thanks for fighting a good fight. And up in the corner there, we got the QR code for Camp Jack Hazard. You get in there, sign your kid up for camp, sign up for the alumni weekend, and also sign up to be a recurring donor to the Jack and Buena Hazard Foundation and keep camp running for another 100 years.
Yep. And just as a side note for any of your buddy that's getting on there and they're like, inflation's been rough. Gas is expensive. I don't know if I can afford camp. Well, Jason's here to help you because I do an enormous amount of fundraising during the year to help raise, and some amazing people give directly for the to this, is that we have what's called our campership program. It's actually, if you go to our page under the Go to Camp tab, there's one at the bottom that says camperships. Super easy. One of my biggest missions with this foundation is to get underserved youth up to the mountains. It breaks my heart that they don't have the resources and they have to miss out on these amazing experiences. So really my underlying push to do all this is to get, and this is really my answer, anybody who wants to go to Camp Jack Hazard will get to Camp Jack Hazard. And
that's amazing.
I can proudly say in the last 15 years that we've been providing camperships to families and to anybody who is out there to go, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've declined a scholarship. Because, and it's weird, it's not like the old days. We have people in the Bay Area who make 6 figures a year and they're, from the world of the economy look good, but they don't have the extra money to send their kids to camps because they're living in the Bay Area. And
yeah, right.
So you may have a 6-figure salary, but you're not you don't have a lot of cash flow.
Sure.
And that's what I'm here for, is to help every family to get up to Camp Jack Hazard. And we serve anybody who comes to ask for it. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, but that's what we do. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I'm glad you're doing it. And appreciate you taking time on a Saturday to sit around and talk and reminisce a little bit and tell us about what's going to happen in August for the extended weekend for all the alumni. I'm looking forward to seeing you and the rest of the crew. And we'll make sure we bring some extra canes and some extra defibrillators.
There you go.
And no, I'm looking forward to seeing you in August for sure, if we don't see each other before then. So thanks, Jason.
Hey, thank you very much. And thanks for this opportunity to get the old word out. And once again, people, get your kids out in the nature. They need it.
All right. Thanks, Jason. You have a great day. You
too, bud.
Bye. Well, thanks for joining the Nature Bound podcast. We're looking forward to some episodes in the near future around wintertime driving in the snow, what to do when you get stuck, how to keep from getting stuck, and winter camping, camping in the cold. And we're hoping to get some experts on shotgunning and how to get people fit and started shooting a shotgun for fun and pleasure. So this is Emanuel Rose, and I appreciate you spending some time with me today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Nature Bound. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Be sure to purchase your copy of The 7 Principles of the Magic Rock at EmanuelRose.com or on Amazon. We thank you again for joining us today, and remember to get nature bound.